Bro, what even is that? Man, I sure hope I don't die. Welcome to Trussell Talks, where I talk about things that you didn't know you wanted to know. The end is a mysterious place, known to some players as the final, most challenging boss battle before beating the game, and to others, it's known as the Zero Cycle. I'm looking at you, speedrunners. Oh shit. I don't know how people can do this. Like, this is crazy. Anyway, the climax of the game is here. The long fights against mobs, the building of bases, all of that culminates in ending up in the end and fighting the Ender Dragon. Finally, you get the dragon egg once you kill the dragon. All the resources drained, all the time you spent trying to defeat this game's final boss leaves you with the egg as its reward. But what is the end? Why does it exist? Who has explored these lands before us? There has to be something that tells us why the end is the end, and why the player's story does not end here. Minecraft lore has always shown the end as a place of aura and mystery, seen with the hundreds of Endermen teleporting from block to block, or the massive chorus fruit growth and end cities. My goal today is to theorize what the end truly is about. When the player spawns into the end, we hear the growl of the Ender Dragon. And once the player builds up onto the end island, we see hundreds of Endermen scattered across the island presumably where they originated. We then look up to see 10 massive, towering pillars of obsidian, their purpose being to host the end crystals that the dragon heals from. We also see some iron bars protecting the end crystals. Obviously, these pillars are not naturally generated. They must have been created by something else, or someone else. Going back in the Minecraft timeline, before the player existed, we know of the ancient builders, a technologically advanced race with the capacity to travel through dimensions. They were forced to escape the overworld for reasons I will explore in another video. Speaking of videos, if you guys are enjoying the video so far, please consider liking and subscribing. It really motivates me to put more work into these videos and know that you guys are all enjoying the type of content I put out. Anyway, let's move on with the video. They discovered the magic necessary to allow them to teleport to the end, building off their knowledge of entering the nether dimension to do so. They created a lock system so impossible to get through that the solution would only come far, far later. They traveled through the end portal and continued their experiments. They created the Ender Dragon. Something to note is you can get the advancement "Is it a plane?" achieved when using a spyglass and looking at the Ender Dragon. Planes are mechanical objects, not an organism, and this can also be applied to the dragon. Why else would the dragon be called a plane if it was not a robot? I believe in the theory that YouTubers such as Wifies have theorized that the Ender Dragon is actually a robot. The end crystals, those highly unstable blocks on top of the pillars that when interacted with, it certainly means death. We see that those end crystals can heal the dragon. You know tractor beams? I imagine that these tractor beams are similar in principle to how the dragon heals itself through the end crystals. It sends a tractor beam to the end crystal that absorbs the radiation from the crystal so that the dragon can heal itself. Since the end crystals are so unstable, they constantly generate their own radiation, which is why they do not deplete. Another piece of evidence aiding this thought of radiation and the dragon is that the webbed bones, which are similar to bats, are the same color as the basalt biome and its particles. When in the basalt biome, if you listen to the game audio very closely, you can hear a Geiger counter, something commonly associated with radiation. We can thus draw a conclusion that the Ender Dragon is powered through radiation, and that the end crystals generate radiation for the dragon to be powered. But that begs the question, where are the ancient builders? Why are there Endermen on the island instead of people? Well, I believe that the Ender Dragon became violent, started rebelling, and started attacking the ancient builders, which led them to the Outer End Islands. I believe that the Outer End Islands are more like an archipelago, with circular islands floating in the void and larger land masses around them. In the Outer End Islands, we find the unnatural fungus-like chorus plant, which stretches far into the sky. When a player eats the fruit from the plant, they teleport 8 blocks in a random direction. Alongside the chorus plant, we see massive end cities and ships. I believe that when the ancient builders left the center end island, they built these massive end cities and tried to live there. They also must have created the shulker, an entity that shoots out a bullet that homes onto the player and, when the player is hit, makes them levitate as a protection against some unknown threat that they had to face. We also notice that there are even more Endermen on these islands compared to the center island. A widely held theory that I agree with is that the Endermen were actually the ancient builders. Because their supplies were running out, they were forced to eat chorus fruit in order to survive. And due to eating so much chorus fruit, they must have evolved into Endermen. An interesting fact about the Outer End Islands is that they are generated in circles. When zooming out, you can see void rings bisecting the island, giving each layer a circular shape. Perhaps the ancient builders' true reason for entering the end was actually to run away from their blocky past and embrace the circle. Endermen produce ender pearls, which the player can use to teleport when thrown. In real life, pearls are made when a mollusk coats an irritant, like a grain of sand, with layers of a substance called nacre to protect itself. Perhaps in the ancient builders' mutation and evolution into Endermen, they developed this ability and thus can create their own pearls. Another question is raised. How do Endermen appear in the overworld and Nether? My personal theory is that while they were evolving or while they were mutating, they were accidentally transported through dimensions, which is a genetic quirk that may have occurred. Going back to the previous thought about the end portal frame being a lock, is that the builders must have created a frame so that nobody could go through without a key. And that key is the Eye of Ender. You need 12 eyes to go through and open the end dimension, and there is a 10% chance of one spawning in a frame with each seed generation. Something that's interesting to note is that there are 10 pillars in the end, and there is also a 10% chance of spawning Eyes of Ender in a portal. There might be a connection between the two, but I honestly don't know. Where did the eyes come from? Currently, we can get them from mixing blaze powder and ender pearls, but where did the builders get them from? If you look back in Minecraft versions in the past, in Minecraft 1.8, cleric villagers were able to sell Eyes of Ender at tier 3. It could be possible that the builders purchased them from the clerics, but who knows where the clerics got them from? It's probably going to be a mystery until the end of time. Knowing the end has a lock system that can only be unlocked with massive amounts of resources, we finally understand what the end is about. The end dimension was the end of the ancient builders and their civilization. The dimension was their grave, their bunker against whatever threat they had to face in the overworld. The advancement Free the End, gained by killing the Ender Dragon, alludes to the fact that the player's story isn't over unless they kill the dragon. If they don't kill the dragon, they are trapped in the end unless they die, thus being at the end of the story. The player killing the dragon frees themselves from the end of their story, allowing them to exit the dimension. No longer will the player have to succumb to the fate of those that came before, and now the player finds that they are in control of their own destiny.